Hey everyone, my name is Nathan Jones, and if you're new here, welcome. I like to talk about all things movies, specifically Blu-rays, and today we're going to start my film journey. So, the last few videos that I put out, and the last few weeks, I've been really mulling this over. I've decided to start journaling, like physically journaling, my film watching experiences, also the things that I've been picking up. And it all stirred from the fact that I was able to go outside the US and go see my friends in the UK. And I want to say thank you, all of you that I've met, and also the pickups that I got, and we're going to talk about that today. But that's what started this whole idea of doing a film journey. So for myself, and just kind of journaling and interacting with the films that I watch and the ones that I pick up. And also, I want to get recommendations from you, and we'll get to that in a second. But that's kind of where my idea for this film journal kind of started, was thinking about all of the things that I interact with within this medium. And also the fact that I have a YouTube channel, and I obviously love talking about film, and I also love hearing from everyone else talking about movies as well and how they interact with it. So that's what this film journey is going to be about. So I'm going to go through this week by week. I plan on doing this for a year. Maybe it will be longer because I might enjoy this process quite a bit. But that's what today's going to be. We're going to start from week 1, which starts on Saturday, July 13th, all the way to Saturday, July 20th. So I'm going to be trying to doing Saturday to Saturday and kind of covering the week as it is, and the things that I've watched, the things that I've picked up. I'm also going to recommend and spotlight some people in the space and things that other people are doing. So I'm going to have a little thing at the end of the episode right here of the first film journal where I'm going to be spotlighting a certain video or two, and I'm excited about that too, because I want to get more with the community in terms of not just this be an insular thing about my own journal and my own journey about it, but at the same time that's kind of what a lot of the focus of this is. But the other thing too is I would also love to get recommendations from you. I would love to, get maybe a Blu-ray that comes up in your mind, or a 4K, and you're like, hey, check this out, and let me know in the comment section. And if it's something that I haven't seen before, or maybe it's something I can rewatch, I would love to spotlight that on the channel as well, and spotlight your comment. And I would just love to hear different people's thoughts on different things, and because that's what this whole medium is all about, is exploring the different ventures that there are outside of what we normally have in our day-to-day lives. So with that being said, let's jump into the titles that I've picked up, the films that I've watched, and this journey kind of starting off at a very interesting spot. So I hope you enjoy this new little adventure of mine, and I'm really excited to start it, and I hope you are along for the ride and can enjoy it as well. Thank you so much for watching. Let's jump into the journal. All right, so I want to start this journal on Saturday, July 13th, which is a day and a half after I came back. Well, actually, I think it's a day that I came back. I woke up at 4 a.m. because I couldn't sleep from jet lag, because I was out of the country 6 hours ahead of where I normally am. And so I'm not used to the time zone. So, of course, I woke up at 4. What do I want to do? I'm going to watch movies, of course. So let's jump into some of these titles that I picked up, and also at the same time, I covered these in my last video. If you're curious about all the things I picked up in the UK, there's a link down in the description. But let's jump into the titles that I watched. So at 4 a.m., I watched Stage Fright. I got this from my buddy Sam. This is actually the first thing that I picked up in London when I was at FOP with him. This is directed by Michelle Savoy. I believe that's correct. This is also known as Aquarius, but this is an incredible disc, and this was so much fun. This was a fun slasher film with an Italian, a little aesthetic right there, that giallo aesthetic. And this movie is about a stage production. They're kind of just practicing their stage production, and you have this character in the stage production who is this guy who's just normally there, but he actually has an owl mask on, and he's a part of it, and he's just a normal guy when you can see him take it off. But kind of early on in the film, somebody maybe replaces him and pretends to be him for a second, but hell arises and things go awry, and lots of people die, and there's a lot of really creative deaths in here, and also just a fantastic score. So To talk more about Savoy's work, I actually will get back to that at the very end of the video. But I watched The Church not too long ago, and I really enjoyed it. So having that process, and now watching Stage Fright from, I think, '87 is when this movie came out. This was just a really great experience, and honestly, I'm just really curious about more and more of his films. And so I know that he has had a lot of influences and worked with Argento, and has worked with him in the past, and then also Terry Gilliam has some references here as well. But this is just such a fun film that I definitely recommend. This is from Shameless Screen Entertainment, which has a really cool yellow slip here. But yeah, this is definitely not for the faint of heart, because there are definitely some pretty crazy death scenes in here. So if you are a little squeamish, I definitely would say that trigger warning here for this movie. But this is just such a fun film. This is one of the most fun films I've watched, and this was a great start to me waking up at 4 a.m. and just kind of going all over the place. But there's some really cool special features. This is a new 4K restoration. I was able to watch the interview with the director, which was a lot of fun. In fact, there's actually a little screenshot of that interaction. But I have not actually watched any of the other interviews, but I definitely probably will in the future when I have more time, and also not super jet lagged, right? So I wanted to keep going and watch more movies. So Stage Fright, high recommendation for me. This would be like a 3.54 out of 5 for me if you're looking at Letterboxd. But yes, oh my God, Stage Fright was amazing. So I wanted to kind of do a double feature with this movie. And it made sense to me, at least on paper, because at least reading the description of this film, I expected it to be akin to it, but in a very different vein. And I'm talking about 101 Films' Baghead. So this is by the Duplass brothers, another film that I picked up recently. I picked this up in Manchester. This is one of the Duplass brothers, Mark and Jay, one of their earlier works, and this actually stars an early Greta Gerwig in it as well. Elise Mueller, Ross Partridge, and Steve Zissou. And this is just about a bunch of kind of honestly just young adults who are coming together and trying to come up with this idea for like a low budget horror film. And they just all kind of drunkenly come up with this, and like, hey, let's just go off to this cabin and we can start shooting this this thing right here where you have these characters with a bag head over them, and you're trying to figure out who is the person, in their theory of their film, who is the baghead killer, right? So this actually is like a low stage kind of indie drama of sorts, with very a lot of kind of guerrilla camera work, but it becomes a horror film in a weird extent, because it starts going in directions where like, well, wait a minute, all of them are here and there's somebody with a bag head chasing them. So things go a little bit awry and crazy, and it's just a fun film. It's one of those ones that has a lot of innocence attached to it, because I feel like I'm somebody who's watched a lot of the Duplass brother films, like Blue Jay, for instance, which is a very different film from this, or the one that I love, which is maybe a little bit more akin to maybe a bridge between those two. And I don't know, this is just a fun film. It's definitely not like one of their best works. It's one of their early works, of course, so I feel like they're experimenting a lot. So it's really cool just to see that process going through their head, and just see these art students almost get tracked down from a killer. So Baghead's a great release. It's got some cool special features. I have not checked them out, but it's got a commentary from the Duplass brothers themselves, and they answer questions that they've already answered, and some extra scenes in here. But a great film, and it was a lot of fun to dive into that. As I was continuing on through my day, I knew I wanted to watch more films, especially recommendations from my friends, and so I actually watched one of Chris's recommendations, and that was The Appointment. This is from BFI Flipside, and this is just an incredibly shot film, low budget, great English film that I don't really feel like needs, I feel like it needs to be talked about more. It's by Lindsay G. Vickers and is starring Edward Woodard and Jane Marrow, and this is just a crazy supernatural film. I actually watched a film on the plane, The Dead Zone, that I feel like is a good pairing with it. But this is just a really great cult horror film. I think Edward Woodard had done Wicker Man a little bit prior to this, because this came out in '81, this movie right here. And this is just about some pretty crazy psychological horror that is going on, where Edward Woodward's character is kind of honestly seeing these visions come true left and right as the story progresses. But there is some pretty haunting images going on in this. But the fact that, like I had mentioned earlier about the budget itself, it's just so tight. This is like just a really well shot, well crafted film, and this is the only film that this director had made, like full length feature film, that I'm aware of. And it's an incredible film, and there you can tell that there's something looming in the background as the story progresses, and it just gets crazier and crazier. So if you're a fan of stuff like The Changeling, or maybe even something along the lines of, I'm trying to think here, more psychological things like The Innocents, you are going to like this movie. And it's very English in the best way possible. There's also some really good special features in here as well. There's actually, this is stacked with special features. You can see this whole red chunk here. There's actually a short film called The Lake that came out a couple years prior. I think I mentioned it in my last video, but wow, what an incredible short film and a great companion piece to this. And you can just tell, based on the budget side of things, how well utilized it is. But there's just so many great things in here, along with some 2021 interviews and some shorts with different people who are involved with the film itself, and some essays as well. It's just an incredible disc, and honestly, there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot of things to dive into, and there's a lot of history, I feel like, involved in this release. And so I'm super excited to dive into this a little bit deeper and have like a more rich experience with it as I watch it. But man, oh man, this is one of the best films that I had seen out of this whole bag. Like, I would say Stage Fright and The Appointment so far are like winners in my book in terms of some of the best films I've watched over the week. So yes, The Appointment was great. Thank you so much, Chris, for the recommendation. I really appreciate it. And the last film I watched for the day was one that I almost watched on my flight, but I didn't do it because it was actually, some scenes were cut from it. And I'm talking about Out of Darkness. So this came out a few years ago. I remember seeing the trailer for it, and I was really enthralled by like the atmosphere of that. And I was like, okay, what is this mystery? And it is about Primitive Man, this group of characters right here, who actually are all together in a very desolate and isolated landscape. And they're all coming together to, kind of press forward and, try to find a good place for shelter from this landscape. Meanwhile, in the background, and there's a lot of things going on where people are like just dying, and some mysteries start happening, and you just don't really know what's going on or what's hunting them. And it gets to a very enthralling conclusion that I think maybe trips on itself a little bit, and maybe I don't enjoy the reveal necessarily, and I'm not going to reveal it for you. If you watch this movie, I want people to watch this movie. Nonetheless, it's a good film, and especially for the atmosphere. There is a lot of really good tension in here, and it's a really creative way of putting the prehistoric film in its place in a very different perspective, because I feel like you would see something like 10,000 BC, it just doesn't really do anything in terms of like anything completely crazy or new. But something like this is like a really good genre bend of that historical epic mixed with a horror film and with that aesthetic, and it does it really, really well. And despite me not liking the ending, I think this is a great film. This is a good movie that I think people should definitely check out. If you at least watch this on some kind of streaming service, you don't have to pick up the disc, but this is a great release, and I'm excited to talk about it. So Out of Darkness was the last thing I watched on Saturday. All right, so Sunday I woke up a little bit later than 4 o'clock, maybe like 4:30, so not much different, but I decided to do a big chunk of films. I decided to watch, 6 movies here I'm going to be talking about on Sunday. It was a busy day because I was just lazy and recovering still from the fact that I had a lot of jet lag. And those films are, let's start off with one that is a doozy and might kind of surpass all the films I had mentioned earlier in terms of being one of my favorites. And I'm talking about Raw. This movie, directed by Julie Ducournau, I probably said that incorrectly. It's a French director. She directed Titane, that came out a few years ago, which was a critical hit. And so was Raw back when it came out. But I got this disc from Second Sight. I've been wanting to watch this movie for a long time. I've kind of been putting it off just because I've heard the subject material is a little hard to watch. Hard to stomach is probably the best way to put it. At the same time, I definitely was very curious, and I feel like this was a really good moment to pick this film up and finally check it out. And wow, this was an incredible debut film from Durker now. Probably said it wrong again. This is starring Garance Maurier and Ella Rumpf, and those two are sisters, I believe, in the film. And it is about a woman who is a part of this vegetarian family, that they're both at college and kind of going off and doing their own thing. They're at veterinary school. That's where they're, what kind of their studies. And there is her older sister and her, and she's just starting off this journey into, kind of being an adult, and also just kind of becoming on her own. And there's a lot of becoming in this film in terms of just identity and sexuality, but also at the same time, what we ingest and who we are as people, and how that determines ourselves. I'm probably over analyzing it, but this is a really good film about a woman who is a vegetarian, who goes into eating meat and decides to go about maybe making this a main course of sorts. But like I said, there's a lot of layers to this film that just keep going further and further, besides the fact that she's eating pieces of meat from people, right? Being a cannibal of sorts. It's a great film. I highly recommend people check this out, even with the subject material being really dark. I think it's just really beautifully shot. It's beautifully made. It's got a lot of layers, like I said, to it, and it's definitely one of the best films out there. And Second Sight did a great bit of special features. I did not check it out because I had a lot of movies to watch that day, but I will get back to it eventually. Next, as I'm moving, I actually wanted to, like I said, continue with the recommendations from my friends, and so I decided to watch the film that Davey had recommended to me, and that's Lola. This is a found footage film set around World War II, kind of right in the middle, kind of the beginning of it. And this is just a really crazy concept of a science fiction found footage film that also feels like a historical drama in some sorts. And it's about two sisters who invent this thing that can read radio waves and television feed from the future. And so they can kind of see in the future and kind of predict things, or at least look at certain events that happen. They tune into David Bowie quite a bit, and eventually something happens to where things start getting altered a little bit more. This is obviously during World War II, so they are kind of enlisted by the British Army to help them out against Germany as they're getting bombed, obviously. And this is where things start going awry, things start changing, and history starts changing. And it's just a really cool concept. Obviously, I said it's a found footage film, so it's almost like in a sepia tone, the way that it's shot, but it feels very modern. It's a very weird film to describe to people who haven't seen things like that, but this is just an incredible kind of really creative idea that I don't think has been done, and it's just one of those things that really I think is worth watching. And I want to say thanks, Davey, for recommending this film. Lola is a fantastic film, and if you like found footage or science fiction films, that's one to check out for sure. The next film I want to talk about is one that I was curious about. I remember watching the trailer to it, but it's about the adult film industry, so I can't really talk much more about that, but it is Pleasure. It is directed by Ninja Thyberg and is starring Sofia Kapal, and is a really in-depth look into the adult film industry. And this is a movie that is really hard to watch for the sheer fact that there's a lot of things that go on to our main character, who is coming over from Sweden to become an adult actress in LA, I believe, and just jump into this industry that honestly she's just wanting to be herself, but at the same time make some money and get out of the situation that she was in before. And so there's a little bit of that past creeping up in this film, but at the same time a lot of independence that she's getting as she's going through the motions of getting paid and obviously doing the things that you would do in adult entertainment. And this movie is a very honest depiction of, I feel like, maybe the background of what that entertainment looks like, and the people who are involved in it, and the lucrative deals that are involved with it, and a lot of that isn't really discussed. And it's honestly it's not something that is discussed mostly in public, because obviously it's an adult thing, right? It's something that almost like taboo to talk about and to dive into. But I really love the direction here, and I think this is actually a movie that is more than skin deep, to use a bad cliche. But this is a movie that has a lot of interesting parts that I would say are a little bit deeper than just the adult film. And it's about a lot of identity and the fact that people can become themselves within a space like this and kind of go through the motions of it. It's worth watching, and I definitely recommend it. It's definitely very hardcore. I will mention that before I say that. So if you are not used to that other adult stuff, I definitely wouldn't recommend that. But if you are open to that stuff, this is a great film about identity, and I definitely recommend it. But like I said, warning for people who want to watch it. So let's jump on to another release from Mubi, one that I've been wanting to watch for a while now, and I'm talking about Benedetta. And Benedetta was a really, really fun film. Fun maybe is the wrong word. I've used that word too much. Sorry, Sam. But this is a film that is directed by Paul Verhoeven, who I'm a big fan of, obviously RoboCop and whatnot. Starship Troopers, love his films. Very pervasive person, and I think this is another pervasive film. This is a film that is kind of blasphemous in the ways that it is against religion, but at the same time, sexuality within religion, and that's what this ties into. So that you have Benedetta, who is a nun at this church, and you get somebody who comes in from the streets and who is kind of taken in by the church, but starts falling in a weird trance with Benedetta, and you can see that pull back and forth of that curiosity and that forbidden fruit that you see, that you get that religious allegory kind of coming into play with this film. There's a lot of interesting choices that Paul Verhoeven has done with this movie. I think I overall enjoy it, and I like a lot of the direction. There's a lot of crazy kind of mystic and some bad CGI that is involved in this movie, because there's some hallucinations that occur in it that maybe kind of throw me off a little bit, I think, upon first viewing. But I think it does spell well for the film itself, and is a little bit more than those parts kind of equaling the whole. So it's definitely one that I enjoy. It's definitely very I feel like people either love it or they hate it. I'm definitely in the love it category, because I'm a fan of his work, and I also just like the direction of this film. But I think it's definitely up for criticism, and I think people are valid on both sides in terms of how they view this film. But I really enjoy it. I think Paul Verhoeven has done great work and has continued to do great work. So Benedetta was definitely a great release for me, and I enjoyed it. All right, now we're to our fourth film in the Sunday that I had that was all freaking jet lag and just being up all day. Was one that I actually have seen quite a bit of times. It's one of those gateway horror films for me. It's Jeepers Creepers from 101 Films. This movie is one that changed my mind a lot on horror, like I had mentioned in my previous video. This is just a really fun film with Justin Long, and who else is it? Gina Phillips, who was in the movie Chained, which is also a good film. Shout out to Movie Chatter for that recommendation. But this is a story about two teens who are just kind of doing a road trip, and they almost get ran off the road by this mysterious trucker. But there's something more that meets the eye to this trucker. It happens to be some kind of demonic entity that comes out only, I think, 23 years. I think that's I don't remember the legend of Jeepers Creepers, and I apologize for that. But it is a great film, and it has a lot of atmosphere to it and a lot of really cool effects. And I think it's a movie that it does go down in history in terms of one of the cool creature features from the early 2000s. I've mentioned the director before, but I'm not a fan of him or the things that he's done necessarily. But this film itself, I am a fan of, and I do really enjoy this movie, and I think it's one of those great early 2000s horror films. And I've seen this about, I don't know, 5 or 6 times now, and I finally own it on Blu-ray. So I finally picked it up from 101 Films. So Jeepers Creepers, it's a fun movie. It's a great rewatch, and I had a good time with it. All right, so the last film I want to talk about for Sunday is one that I've seen multiple times, and I also mentioned it in my last video, but I'm talking about Host. This is from Second Sight. This is the Zoom found footage horror film that happened, during the height of the bad times in 2020 for everybody. But this is a really creative endeavor, and I really enjoy this. I watched this on Shudder. I've seen it probably about 5 times. Very similar to Jeepers Creepers. I've seen it a lot, but I just really enjoy it. It's really short. It's only 57 minutes, and it actually has a bunch of special features on it that you can get on this. But it's just a really cool concept. The way that it's shot, it's a lot like the movie Searching, where it's kind of through the lens of a lot of the social media, and actually a Zoom call. It's literally a Zoom call, so it's being shown through that with filters and things going awry. But these friends, they're all coming together to kind of do this thing, the seance, trying to connect with the dead, and just have a good time with it, honestly, because they can't see each other, because it's during lockdown. But here's the thing: they do this, they don't take it seriously. Things start going awry. Bad stuff happens. It's worth a watch. It's really short. Go watch it on Shudder if you've not seen it. It's just really fun. I really enjoy this movie, and it gets, honestly, for me, it gets better with each watch. I really enjoy it. I love the atmosphere of the film, and it's super digestible, and I definitely recommend people check out Host. So that was kind of my take on Sunday. Saturday and Sunday were a lot. In fact, that's most of the video, probably. All right, so Monday I was very tired because obviously I still had jet lag, and I just watched a bunch of movies, but might as well watch one more movie at night, right? So when I got home from work, I decided to watch Dark Star. Decided to watch John Carpenter's first film, where he directed a spoof of 2001: A Space Odyssey. And this is quite an interesting film. It's definitely a student film. It definitely feels like the way it's shot and the way it was created. It's kind of a spoof, but at the same time with a very, very low budget. And it was a good time. I definitely need to watch it again, I feel like. I definitely don't think I took in all of what this movie was trying to tell me. I think a lot of it had to do with just there were some sequences in it that kind of bored me. And I'm going to be honest, I would love to kind of revisit and just kind of reevaluate with it. But there was a lot of really fun things in this movie as well. I love this. There's this creature that almost looks like a giant, ball that's people work out on, like stretch on, like a yoga ball, and it is like an alien creature that is very mischievous and kind of crazy, and there's a really great chase sequence with it, and that's one of my favorite parts of the movie. But this is a really cool movie that I think will definitely kind of showcase John Carpenter's future work, right? A lot of his ideas, especially like movies like The Thing, you're going to start getting things like this from just going through this journey right here. So I actually watched the theatrical version of this, which is 83 minutes long. There's a 73-minute cut from John Carpenter that's also on this, but I wanted to watch the theatrical cut because a lot of the times I like to watch those first. But there are some really interesting special features on here as well, where there's a making of There Will Be Light, The Odyssey of Dark Star, which is a 117-minute long kind of making of. I need to jump into that. It's something I haven't dived into. It might actually give me more context and maybe more appreciation for the film itself. But I definitely wanted to pick this movie up, and it's just it's a fun one. It's definitely worth watching especially if you're a John Carpenter fan, or at least curious about his journey as a filmmaker. And Dark Star was definitely my Monday night choice. All right, so I knew this was going to come up, and I'm actually watching a show as I'm currently going through all these movies as well. I started this show back when I was over in the UK. I was over at Chris's, and we decided to start watching Twin Peaks. I'm watching Twin Peaks for the first time, and this is a big deal because I know a lot of people who probably watch this are like, oh my god, you're watching Twin Peaks. I'm excited about it too. And man, oh man, this has just been a lot of exciting times, just kind of delving into the mystery of this town and the people that are involved in it. So I watched the first pilot episode, which I fell in love with. That's what got me into it. I watched the first, I think, 5 episodes while I was over in Northern Ireland with him. But then I decided, you know what, I already have this on my shelf. Might as well just keep watching it, right? So I've watched episode 6 and 7. That's actually the next 2 days. Is Tuesday morning, Wednesday, I watched episodes of Twin Peaks. And I I finished season 1, right? I finished season 1, and it ends on a very great note that I was like, okay, what the fuck is going on in this show? There's so many interesting characters that you just want to really know a little bit more about. A lady with a log, a psycho truck guy with a shotgun who just hates his girlfriend. just to name a few people in this crazy town. And Kyle MacLachlan, of course, is our detective who is trying to figure out what's going on. And he's very peculiar as well and has a lot of really interesting things. But I did want to just mention the fact that I am watching this show right now. We'll jump into this a little bit more as I'm kind of going along. But season 1 was fantastic. I love the mystery of it all. I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't seen this show. It's definitely worth your time. I would recommend it if you're like a science fiction fan, but also like melodramas, like Douglas Sirk films, or things that are like maybe a Wim Wenders film. It's just a really interesting look at people in this weirdly small community, this made-up community, that, you know, this mystery of who killed Laura Palmer. I don't think I mentioned that. That's kind of the premise of the show, is this mystery of somebody killed Laura Palmer. They're trying to piece together what all this is about, and that's what the show's about. So I'm excited to jump in further in this, and I'll dive further into this as I go along. But I'm in season 2 now, spoiler alert, and it's been fun. And I know about David Lynch leaving the show. We'll get there when we get there. But Twin Peaks, man, I'm so excited to be in this journey now. Thank you, Chris and Davey and Sam, for pushing me into watching that. All right, so I already mentioned what I had done on Tuesday and Wednesday. I watched Twin Peaks, and I didn't really watch anything else. But I did start on Wednesday night. I started this film, but I was a little too scared. I don't know why. Maybe it was still, I'm going to blame jet lag, right? I've said that word probably too many times. But I finally watched Ganjam. I actually finished this in the morning on Thursday. So Ganjam, Haunted Asylum, I watched this in the morning so I wouldn't be scared. I really enjoyed this found footage South Korean film. I think from 2018 is when this came out. And honestly, I need more found footage films. I need more of them. I've been loving things since like Mungo and Blair Witch Project, and now this. There's just so many creative things going on with the different types of things that you can do with found footage. But anyway, suffice to say, this is a film about some YouTubers, people who stream, who go to these haunted places, and they are just trying to like get as many streams as possible and get a little bit scared in the meantime. It's kind of like Ghost Hunters, if you're familiar with that show. But things start going awry at one of the most haunted places in Korea. And oh my gosh, I love the way this film goes and the different camera angles and the different directions, because they set up a lot of webcams in this. And a lot of the feeds get really messy just because they're in this crazy asylum. And it's so much fun. And there's a lot of really great character work in here. Surprisingly, you care about the people. I did, at least. But there's really great scares in it as well, because this is a movie that like will make you jump, but like in the best way possible. Like not cheap jump scares. It's literally like scary stuff, which is why I watched it in the morning, right? I'm just a little bit of a scaredy cat. But there's some really cool special features in here. I was able to watch some of it. I was able to watch Fear the Unknown, which is Zoe Rose Smith on Ganjam, talking about kind of the history of the place itself and the experience of this film alongside the other kind of sides of, this found footage films and also Ganjam itself. And I quite enjoyed it, and I need to kind of jump into more special features, but this is a great release. This is one of the best films I watched during the week, and if I have recommended any of them, I've recommended a few. This is definitely one I would also add to the list, especially if you're a fan of found footage or horror films. But that night, I decided to watch a film that I've been a little obsessed with, a new sport of mine. It's called football, English football, that is, or just in general soccer, right, for us Americans. But football in general, I was over in England during the time that the Euros were happening, so it was really exciting to be around people who are in love with that sport and seeing the success that England had. And it was fervent, and so something that like kind of permeated towards me. So I wanted to jump into it as well. In fact, I actually jumped into people who are in England. Do not hate me if this is not your team, but I've actually started watching some football now, and I think I might like Tottenham, but we'll see how that goes. And like I said, please don't unsubscribe or hate me for liking a certain thing. I'm an American. I have no allegiance to any particular town or anything like that. So, but I'm excited about the journey of jumping into some football. But one thing I watched was Escape to Victory. I picked this film up. This is directed by John Huston, legendary director. Really great cast of Max von Sydow. We got Michael Caine, and we also have Sylvester Stallone in it, which was a very interesting kind of hodgepodge of people. But it's almost like a prisoner of war film because this is during World War II, and so these are some Allied POWs, so prisoner of wars that are, kind of stuck in this situation. Football starts getting interested. Max von Sydow's character, he starts getting interested because he's one of the wardens at this prison, and he gets interested in like the way that the Englishmen are playing this game, and it's like, okay, well, let's put these things together. And it eventually gets to a spot where they're going to be playing this really great exhibition game against a German team, and also in front of a huge crowd. And it almost turns into The Great Escape in some ways, because they're trying to figure out, like, well, hey, let's try to escape this situation. I didn't mention that Pele's in this film as well, which is a great addition to this legendary soccer player. And it was just a really cool kind of combination of The Great Escape plus a sports movie and mashing it together. And I had a really good time with it. And John Huston did a really great job directing it, although oddball choices with some of the cast and crew, but I think I really enjoyed kind of this coming together, and it turns out to be a really fun sports movie. So Escape to Victory was a fun thing to follow up Ganjam and not be scared anymore. But that's not actually the only thing I watched during this day. I actually was able to watch a little film called Longlegs in the theaters, and I had a really good time with it. There were some things about this movie that I think I would have changed differently, but the atmosphere was definitely there. And it's a new film directed by Oz Perkins. It's starring Nick Cage, and who plays Longlegs, and it's about a serial killer who is on the loose and trying to capture this guy who was hurting children and honestly hurting a whole family of sorts every single time in the wake of these notes that people keep finding. And man, oh man, this movie is wildly atmospheric, and I think it's beautifully shot. However, the story is a little lackluster in terms of the way that I think things come together. It's fairly predictable, unfortunately, and I think that's maybe where a lot of the flaws lie in it. I'm kind of torn between it because I really adore the atmosphere and the direction of the film, but at the same time, the story kind of waters it down a little bit for me in terms of the way that things kind of play out. But regardless, I definitely recommend people check it out. It's definitely a movie to watch in the theater. It's a theater experience. It's that atmosphere is the selling point, and that's the fun part about it. And they have some fun satanic kind of things going on in it as well that are just a little highlight of it, but it's a little corny in ways too. But nonetheless, I like Longlegs. I want to revisit it once it comes out on physical media, so I will do that once it does. So that's what I did for Thursday night. Let's jump on to my Friday night. All right, Friday night I only watched one movie, and that was A Taste of Things. Right here, I wanted to kind of get away from horror a little bit and kind of jump into more of a period piece film. It's a tragic period piece film, but it's a really good one, and it's very special. This movie is starring Juliette Binoche and Benoit Magimel, and it's directed by Tran Anh Hung. And man, oh man, this is a food movie about food, right? First and foremost, if you're a fan of Babette's Feast or Tampopo, this is a movie right up your alley. And this movie is about the food, and for like the first 40 minutes to an hour, it's about preparing food left and right. In fact, I'm hungry talking about it because as you're watching this movie, you get hungry as well. So anyone who's watching this movie before, there's a warning for people. You're going to get hungry watching this movie. But man, oh man, this was a really great drama. It was a beautifully shot film. It's about these two cooks who kind of fall in love with each other as they're doing their craft, the thing that they do. It becomes a little sad and melancholic in ways where things happen and transpire in the film. I'm not going to really get into it. I want people to check this movie out. But this is just a beautiful film. This is one of the most beautiful films I've watched in a long time, and one that will stick with me in images of food, and also just the landscape in itself, and the beautiful people involved in the film itself. It was a delectable film. to be cheap and use that word, but I definitely recommend people check out A Taste of Things. It's one that I think people will talk about in the future. But we're gonna jump to Saturday. I'm gonna kind of counter Saturday because we have a new video coming out this weekend. It's me, where I may have gone to Rogers and may have picked up some Criterions. So I'm not gonna jump into that, but I did come back from that trip, and I'll jump into those titles in a new video. But I did pick up a few titles when I went over to my local store, Entertainmart, which is where I am able to pick up used Blu-Rays or new and used Blu-Rays. But I picked up a few titles. And I told you I was going to come back to Savoy. The first one I picked up is The Sect. And The Sect is directed by Dario Argento, or it's a Savoy film, but Argento has produced it. And I don't really know much about it, but like I had said before, the church and stage fright has really got me involved in this. So I picked this one up. This is from Severin. This is just the Blu-ray of it, and I'm curious about it. It's got Kelly Curtis, who is Jamie Lee's sister, in it, and Herbert Lom, who I'm a fan of, Dracula in the past, and quite a bit of different people. But it looks like Dario Argento produced and co-wrote this. But it's going to be a fun film, and The Sect is something I am very much curious about checking out. Another film that I wanted to pick up, or at least I was browsing and I was like, I wanted this film. I've been in a horror mood, so I picked up Night of the Comets. And this is from Scream Factory, and this is one that I've been wanting to watch for a long time. This came out in 1984, and I don't really know much about this movie, besides the title and a couple sequences I've seen in just various videos and film essays that I've looked into. But this is going to be a fun film, and I already know this is going to be an 80s classic. So it's kind of described as Valley Girl meets Night of the Living Dead. So that's going to be exciting. And the last movie I picked up, as I'm kind of transitioning away from this, the things that I picked up, into the spotlight, is a movie that I've been wanting to watch when it came out in theaters. Sadly, I neglected watching this movie in theaters. It's The Boy and the Heron. The last Miyazaki film. Who knows if that's the case, but this is a love letter to Miyazaki. If anyone's a fan of animation, and especially Japanese animation, you know this filmmaker. And I've heard incredible things about this movie. I've heard Robert Pattinson's just insanely great. It also has Willem Dafoe in it, Mark Hamill. It's got Florence Pugh, Christian Bale, Dave Bautista, Gemma Chan, and Karen Fukuhara. And just to name a few people in this movie. But I'm so excited to jump into this. I haven't seen it yet, so like I said, I sadly missed this in theaters, and so I'm really curious about this movie, and I'm very excited to jump into it. So with that being said, let's transition over here to the Spotlight Corner, where I want to kind of spotlight a few of my friends on YouTube and some of the videos and challenges that they're doing. All right, so transitioning over to the Spotlight Corner, this is where I want to start spotlighting people in the community, either through Instagram or through YouTube, and kind of just talk about the things that people are doing around, in our great space that I really, really love in physical media. And today I want to talk about the Rad Pack. They're actually doing a cool challenge right now, talking about 1994. So they have issued a challenge for people to talk about their Red 9 challenge, where they're going to be talking about 9 films from 1994. So I'm going to be probably doing something myself. I hope I can get something out shortly where I kind of talk about my favorite 9 films. But these are all good pals of mine. They've all been on my channel here, all 3 of them. And I definitely enjoy Justin and Mel, and also Garrett. They're all fantastic people, and definitely go check out their video. I'm going to be linking it down in the description, where I'm going to be kind of linking that challenge. And so if you're curious about jumping into it, definitely go follow along with them and make your own list of your favorite films from 1994. So that's it for the Spotlight Corner. So let's jump back to the Blu-ray closet, to where I kind of finish off my thoughts on this week. All right, so we finished off week 1, and I'm so excited to jump into that 1994 challenge, honestly. But this journal and this film journey is just beginning. This is week 1, and I hope you enjoyed the titles that I had discussed, the things that I've picked up, and also the people that I've spotlight. But one more thing before I go, please recommend something for me down in the comment section. I would love to know of anything I should check out for the week. or anything that I probably should just pick up or something like that. I would love to hear your input on here, and I hope you enjoyed this journey. Hopefully I can compact it, make it a little bit quicker, but I really enjoyed this process, and I'm continuing this this film journey, and I cannot wait to dive into it further alongside with you. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Give it a like, comment below, share, hit the notification bell, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. I'm not jonesing around.